So, like I was saying, this is the presentation. This is the presentation that Kylie did previously, and we're going to do another version of it, which updates it with the information for bond hearings. Now, there's also a lot of new people that hadn't seen this one before, and so I'll show it to you again. And there's a few things that I've felt like needed some more talking about. First of all, can everybody hear me? Okay, can you guys got to speak up and interact with me and let me know if you're able to hear? Okay, like
Yeah,
I
we can
gotta.
hear you now.
Okay, great. I got a bad connection, but we'll try to make it work. Yeah, see, thumbs up. So yeah, so anyway, we got most of the people here, so that's good. Let's get right into it. First of all, can everyone see the slideshow, or can you see the slides? Yes or no? Anybody there?
Yes.
Okay. Make sure you guys speak up. No, let me let them load. So again, we're talking about the habeas.
It's not in presentation mode, but we can see it.
Okay. Yeah, and it looks like it was still coming up anyway, right? So let me just go back. Um, so again, Kylie put this together, and it's kind of just to make sure you have a general overview, especially like folks that are helping people with these with the habeas petitions, and you just want to know kind of generally what to do. And we're really trying to set it up so people can do it pro se. Now, let me say this qualifier: I'm not an immigration attorney. All right, I tried to be one, in October, kind of through November, got in over my head, and then finally met up with some real immigration attorneys, and they do the heavy lifting. But this is really this is coming from the standpoint of an attorney who, I when I went to the courts and I was trying to get people out of detention, I would go in and approach it because I do a lot of criminal. So I would approach it that way. In criminal, you get a case, you go to the court, you try to get it on calendar, you try to get your date set up, and then, sometimes you can make oral arguments about, whatever needs to be done. There's a process, right? You do an arraignment, and then, you plead guilty, not guilty, and then you set it for pretrial, and you might come back for a series of hearings and you try to negotiate a resolution of the case, or you set it for trial and you get ready for trial. All right. Pretty straightforward in criminal cases. And that's the way I treated it. And again, I will tell you guys the story. The way that I got into it is, I live over near 15th and Franklin, where there's a large convergence of Latino and Somali residents. So it's one of those neighborhoods that's targeted a lot. Um, but I'm that old guy, the cantankerous guy, get off my lawn, you know, put your garbage cans back at night, make sure you recycle properly, that type of thing. And I'm like kind of the neighborhood cop, right? You turn off your music, that type of thing. Well, there's a particular guy in our neighborhood, only a Spanish speaker, right? And so, and I speak Spanish enough to pass and talk to him. He's kind of like the guy that, you know, let's just say he's drunk a lot, kind of messes with the neighbors, that type of thing. And I'm always, yelling at him and that type of thing over the years. So one time we got into it, I held him down, got him arrested, and I actually went to the jail, followed the cops to the jail to represent him. All right, even though I got him arrested. So that happened. He didn't. They ended up not really filing charges, just keeping him in the drunk tank, and so fast forward about a year and a half later, this thing starts, right? This whole thing where they're grabbing immigrants. So he gets ripped from ICE, like, and this is October maybe, or yeah, kind of Octoberish of this year. And my neighbors came to me, hey, he got taken, and we figure out he's at the Whipple building. Go over to the Whipple building. They actually released him. Um, and probably not because of any skill of me, but just because they released him. And then uh fast forward, he actually got picked up and deported at some point. And I've talked to him and just told him like when he's ready, we'll do what we can to get him back. But after him, a few weeks later, there was another Somali resident who got taken by ICE. Again, same thing played out. And that was like a few weeks apart, but then it started picking up like really intensely, like in November. And like I'd be going to Whipple like a couple of times a week. And then, by December, I was going there 3 times a day with like multiple names. And then, by the time Renee Good got shot, I was spending most of my days there, like doing some of my work there, so on and so forth. So that's how I got into it. I'm not an immigration lawyer. Um, I think that most immigration attorneys, like, this is not where they make their money, is in doing habeas corpus petitions. Maybe now, but that are originally, and Marie's shaking her head. So are you immigration attorney, Marie? No, all right. I was gonna say, okay, well then yeah, I was gonna say, all right, but the point being that is that this is not where they make their money, because like a lot of this is akin to criminal law. You do habeas corpus corpus petitions all the time, especially if you're involved in like death penalty cases and like long sentences. So I approached it from the criminal law standpoint. That's the point that I'm telling you. And I was comfortable with the concepts, but not the actual execution. I did get admitted to immigration court. I've done asylum hearings, but again, like the people who are on this call that are litigators, a lot of times it's just arguing the facts, right? And making your case about the facts. All right. So in an asylum hearing. So I think that that's probably like low level, but it's low level for attorneys, but high stakes for the person. All right. So, I go in and I know about their life and why they would get asylum and so on and so forth. So that's where, you know, where it comes for me. So I'm telling you this from the standpoint, yes, I'm an attorney, but I'm not an expert in immigration, but I got some things to say about it. So this is really for just introducing kind of concepts and the immigration attorneys, you can jump in, and let me know if I'm way far off base or anything. But was put together by a second year law student. And everybody knows like a second, third year law student is much better than any attorney any day, right? Because they're in school like studying the actual law where we've, kind of saddled up to our specialties, right? So when it comes to research and understanding the integration between legal concepts and theories, I'll take a second year law student anyway. I mean, they do all the research and they when it comes to cases and things like that, like write the complaints, that type of thing. All right, so that's sort of my long disclaimer. So writ habeas corpus, and again, the way I think of it, she's got the definitions here, but you know, a writ habeas corpus is just a challenge to the underlying detention. All right, and this is pretty fancy language, and she copied it out of the out of the book. But yeah, it's just you're challenging the legality of the detention of somebody that's detained. All right, and and for the purposes of what we're talking about here, we're talking about federal court, the federal court system for immigration, right? Not the immigration court, but the federal court. All right. And again, if you're not familiar, if I'm just, speaking like a weird language to you, most things, you're in Minnesota, you're driving down the street, you run into somebody's car, somebody runs into you, state court, you're in the Superior Court, Hennepin County, Dakota County, something like that. You argue it out, judge makes a ruling. If you don't like it, you can appeal, but you'd appeal in the like a panel, and then you would maybe work your way up to the Supreme Court. But you're not going to do that on a car accident or a CPS case or like an estates case or something like that. It's when you have so that's state court. When you have um, issues that have constitutional questions or federal statutes that invoke those things, you know then you're in federal court, right? And then there's courts of specific specialty. For instance, I did a lot of cases in bankruptcy, when I was first practicing, but immigration court is one of those specialty courts. And now that they're creating different types of courts to deal with like overwhelming, issues such as drug courts. They do in San Francisco, for instance, where I am right now, or veterans courts, for instance, where the issues have to do with veterans. So we're talking about you file a writ of habeas corpus in federal court as opposed to immigration court. Um, and basically, the time and when you can is uh, you can file them at any point when the issue of somebody's detention becomes, when you want to get them out of when you want to challenge their detention. Okay, so. And then there's a question she has at the bottom, the threshold question. Can detainees and their family members file writs of habeas corpus? And yes, you can do it, and that's why we're here today, pro se. And you can do it, but you do want some legal counsel. But when you can't, you got to do the best job you can, and that's what we're talking about today. Or find a law student, go get Patricia or Kylie or somebody like that, and see what they can do. There is a guide that she's listed at the bottom. So that's the pro se guidebook, and pro se just is a fancy word for saying somebody who's not a lawyer, trying to file a case on their own. So here she's got a slide about the components of it, and I think that's important. And the reason why is because most people don't really know what a legal pleading looks like. Again, for the most part, our introduction to the legal system is Law and Order. At least for me, it was, and like a little bit of a Bull, shows like that, and so that largely led to me, going to law school and that type of thing. But so they don't really know what they don't show the pleadings on those shows, right? Because if they spent time showing lawyers working on pleadings, then you would get no ratings and you would have no show. But this is what it looks like. All right. So, you know, you got to name the court where it's located. That's at the top. You have a case number. You look down, you have the title of what it is where it says petition for writ of habeas corpus. And then she's got the language about the basic law that creates the jurisdiction. On the left side, you have the name of the person who's the petitioner, right? So petitioner as opposed to a plaintiff. So again, you got a petitioner and a respondent in cases of equitable relief. And that's just a fancy word of saying that you're not going for money. Okay. So equitable relief, right? And the equity here is that we're trying to, get the person released from custody. Okay. So they become the petitioner instead of the plaintiff because you're not suing somebody, for money. All right, and then the respondents are, as you see here, William Barr, Chad Wolf, so on and so forth. So that's kind of like what the first page looks like. So you don't get freaked out when you see it because back in the day when I first started, just as a law clerk, I'd look at one of these and I get freaked out. I see that civil number and they're all long and it looks like I don't know what the hell it looks like, but it looks like a language that I don't speak. And I get freaked out, but don't get freaked out because again, it's just telling you it's a number. Let's see. Hold on. Let me make sure the connection's coming back. Can you guys hear me? Marie, can you hear me? Can you guys
Yep,
hear
we can hear you.
me? Okay, good, 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 good. Thanks. Um, I can only see Marie. If more people turn on your camera, I'd see you guys too.
You are breaking up.
Okay.
We can hear you, but you break up sometimes.
Okay. Okay. Let me know when I break up. I think a couple more people need to turn on their camera because then I can see your face and how you react and if you're shaking your head or you're going no or you got thumbs up or something. So yeah, if you guys could do that. Okay. So there's Jane. All right. Jane, what's up? All right. Uh, okay. So that's what it looks like. And that's what the front page of the document looks like, so you don't get freaked out. And the number, again, the 26, it shows you the year and then has some numbers like it signifies the court and the judge. And then at the top, she's talking about the components. And again, I think the main thing that we're talking about here is just you want to make sure that you have the right court, which a lot of times it's going to be the district court of Minnesota if you're doing this pro se, and then you got the number and you have the petitioner, and then you have all the people that you're suing named, right? And these are basically templates. So a lot of the stuff, it's not gonna. What will change is for instance Jose A. James Cook, and I'll be the person. So, um, and her point with this particular slide is where we're talking about the immediate custodian and the district of confinement. So the district would be the District Court of Minnesota, but also the immediate custodian, right, is the warden of the place, or the person that's responsible. So in this one, we're naming Christy Nome. How telling that they're naming Christy Nome, because she is no longer the immediate. Ding dong, the witch is dead. So it's not her anymore, right? It's going to be somebody else. But the the point being, yeah, thank you. Yeah, the point being is that you got to name the person who's in charge of like the facility. Can you guys hear me? You guys can hear me, right? I broke up a little bit. You gotta speak up, folks. I see a heart emoji. Okay, good. Um, so yeah, the district of confinement is the district of Minnesota, and then the custodian is, you just name all the people. So here's a slide that I really want to get into. We didn't get into it a lot the last time, but for the lawyers on the call, you go to law school and everything's all about factors, right? Because factors, on your exam, when you're arguing your points on the exam, you're talking about the factors, and that's where you get the points to get the higher score on the test, right? But as litigators, these are the factors that we're going to use when we get into a case. You look for the factors of the case in order to argue, and then for the for the lay people, like basically this is the juice that gives you the arguments that you got to make. All right, but again, I'm going to talk about it as if everybody's kind of like law student, attorney, or law clerk, something like that. But the main thing is here that they're talking about the venue. So again, actually, we're not on that slide yet, but let's just again, if you're starting from the top, and she's quoting the law for the application for immediate custodian, right? And again, not automatic, but again, you want to name whoever the immediate custodian is, and we'll just say it's whoever's next up for Christy Nome. I think it was a name, some guy from Oklahoma, but the point being them, and then whoever controls the facility, and so on and so forth. Also, if you look down, this court considers such factors, especially since this court can reach the custodian by service of process. So for the attorneys, are there any attorneys here? Like, is Candace here? Or Patricia? Patricia, did you take? Yeah. Who? Go
Yeah, I'm
ahead.
here.
Okay. There's Candace and Patricia's there. Patricia, did you take civil procedure yet? Before I hit Candace, let me ask Patricia.
Sorry, I wasn't on. I was trying to get off mute. Yes, I did. I've already taken it.
Okay, so I'm not going to ask you this question, Candace. Because I'm going to put Patricia on the spot. So you see
Oh
that part where it
no.
says, so long as custodian can be reached by service of process, the court can issue a
Mhm.
writ within its jurisdiction. What does that look like to you?
To me, it looks like appropriately making sure that they serve within the rules of civil procedure. So making sure it's a person who's over the age of 18, they are associated with the individual or the individual themselves. That's what
Yeah.
I see.
Okay. But it's also what you learned in civil procedure recently. It's a long arm statute.
Yes.
So it's a long arm statute specifically for immigration court. So for the layperson, what does that mean? Um, the way I like to describe it, or the way it was described to me by the judge that taught my civil procedure class, is that if you are a deadbeat dad, and we're just gonna say that because that's what he said, all right? You're a deadbeat dad, and you try to, you got child support payments that you got to make, and you go and try to move to another state or another country, and think that you can't have to pay your child support or have your, your money attached in your new job. Well, if the state of origin where you owe those child support payments has a long arm statute, that means that they can assert jurisdiction over your ass and make sure that you pay those child support payments. So that's a long arm statute. When we're talking about it from that standpoint, meaning, the court in Minnesota can assert jurisdiction over the person who's in the concentration camp or the internment camp in Texas and say, I'm asserting jurisdiction. I want you to bring this person back. So that's what this is all about. And so when you read this rule that she put in here, you outline who the immediate custodian is. You tell them that's your first factor, and then boom, you hit them with the long arm statute argument. All right. And you say that this district has a long arm statute and you can quote the law here. That's what this is all about. All right. And that's deep. And we want to make sure that we keep that. And if you notice, if you look at the law that was 1983, but also they got something on the docket where you see doc number 8, Minnesota, January 16, 2026. Boom. That's law that took place in this century. In fact, not too long ago. So we got a long arm statute, and that's what we mean by equity. Like step number 1, get them removed from Texas to Minnesota. Now, let me just stop here so people can just ask questions or make comments.
I wanted to add something here that may be helpful to the other per se people. So if you're asked by the court, you want to make sure that you're listening, that this is a long arm statute. You also want to ensure that you're mentioning that this individual has what we call minimum contacts with the state and establish that they either have a business there or they have family there, they live there, something that indicates that it is proper that they are within Minnesota's jurisdiction. They are actual citizens of that state. Not to be confused with citizens of a country, but that they're citizens of that state. So it's a very important factor when you're listing that a long arm statute applies there. That's it. That's all I want to say.
It's beautiful. Well, wait. Let's see if Patricia or one of the other law students can get the virtual candy bar. Let's get the virtual candy bar. So, what's the case that we learned in civil procedure?
I know it. International Shoe Code
There
versus
you go.
Washington.
Ding,
Yes.
ding, ding, ding. Candy bar. Amen. There you go. I heard somebody say stop. They're
International
like,
Shoe Company, not International Candy Bar.
All right, but okay. So yeah, somebody's like, stop. But yep, that's it. So we're going back to civil procedure. Now, I admit, at the time in civil procedure, I sometimes fell asleep, but that becomes very important. Like serving people is a big part of the deal, as you will soon find. But yeah, she is right on. Thank you, Patricia. Excellent. See, that's why.
My pleasure.
That's why we got second-year law students. All right. Again,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. Go ahead,
question?
Catherine, please.
So I am not a second-year law school student at all. I am a 10-year grant writer who knows nothing whatsoever about any of this stuff. However, I can fill out a form. That is something I can do. And it looks to me like you said something earlier about that there are forms that you can use that you can repeat over and over again. And if I'm helping somebody, I'm not going to be able to help them as an attorney. Give me another 8 years, maybe, but they don't have 8 years. It sounds like you can use this here you're showing is sort of in a form that you can use to help create something. So if nothing else, you got this. Maybe you can assist an attorney so they're not spending as much time on the, grunt work of it. I'm not sure. Is that what I'm seeing here?
Yeah, I'm working my way up to it, Catherine. Actually.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
No. Well, actually, hold on. My connection's unstable. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So Catherine makes a good point. Actually, I want to stop there and really talk about that, okay? Because templates are key. So once you do the work and you do it for one person, you want to make it like systematize it, right? We had that conversation the other day about systematizing things. So when you look at like this first page, and you see all this. There's a lot of information here. If you look at this page, that's not going to change. Like for instance, up at the top, United States District Court, and then the people that are named on the other side of the V line, those aren't really going to change. I mean, it'll change a little bit today. It's no longer Christy Noem. It was William Barr back in the day when this was made, but now it was Christy Noem, and now it's the new guy from Oklahoma. The only thing that's going to change here is the name up above a petitioner, and then the case number, everything that comes after CV dash. But everything, and so that's what she's talking about. Like, there's a form, I can fill out a form. Yeah, because you know what? Catherine is very detail oriented, and all she's got to do is just, she can start filling this out. She knows the name of the person and the case number. She's already got the first page done. So that and so yeah, and so and again, if we look here, it's going to be actually. Let me just move on one more. So we talked about the equity factors, but again, here are the components of a writ of habeas corpus. You got your introduction, your jurisdiction and venue, your parties, how you exhausted the remedies, statement of facts, legal arguments, legal causes of action, prayer for relief. So again, you're looking at a pleading document, and a lot of the stuff is going to be the same. The introduction is going to be the same, the jurisdiction and venue. The parties are going to be different, and it's the person who's being detained. That name is going to change. The exhaustion of remedies, that I'm going to show you what that looks like in a second, I think, in the coming slides. But basically, exhaustion of remedies means, did you do everything that you could leading up to this particular proceeding to, take care of it? And that'll be fact dependent upon, like, did the person apply for asylum, or were they applying for their green card? And did they go to all the hearings, like stuff like that? That'll be part of that. And did they do other things to try to prevent themselves from getting deported? That would change. The statement of facts and statement of procedure would change. And on Saturday, we're going to do writing a statement of facts. All right. And you guys already did one, but statement of facts is important because that gives you a lot of the information that you're already going to need for the, for your any petition. Legal arguments, it's not really going to change because it's always going to be the same law, but it's the way you apply it, and the way you apply the facts to the law. That'll change a little bit, but not a lot. You can probably use the same template, as you go through, and then the, legal causes of action and the prayer for relief. So we will be at some point circulating a couple of petitions that people can use and fill up. But right now, we're just giving you an overview right now, Catherine. Any questions?
Thank you.
But does that answer any questions, Catherine?
Yes, it does. That's what I was kind of hoping you were going to say, because a lot of this is only about 50% hitting because it's very new to me. But knowing that there's going to be a form that I'll have heard this once, I'll see it again, and it'll click.
Yeah, and you get these slides too. The slides are uploaded to the Signal group, and then you can also just text me for them or email me, and so the number way you can get the slides.
Which
and again,
Signal group are they in?
Oh, I'll send you the Signal group information. I'm just assuming everybody
Perfect.
here is on it. So yeah.
I don't think I am.
Okay, well, make sure you get there.
All right, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, so let me
Wait, am I missing?
Yeah, go ahead, speak up.
No, I'm sorry. I'm taking notes, and I
Oh,
realized
okay,
you have 8 points, and I only have 7. So what am I missing?
So let me move forward. Okay, so what she's doing here is she's just talking about the federal government's legal arguments. So any good lawyer knows that it's not your advocacy, not your points that you're going to make that are the most important. It's what the other side's going to say. All right. Otherwise, you really are just simply doing advocacy work, which is fine, but you got to be a lawyer, and you got to be able to think on the other side of the bench, and you got to be able to think about all angles. So it's really good that she intuitively put what the government's going to say. So she looked at cases, in a couple different states, and kind of like summarized. But let's talk about it in layman's terms. All right, because this is your legal arguments section. So you're going to list the law, and then you're going to say, well, this is how in my case, this is why this argument it doesn't apply. All right, so they're going to say that the federal government doesn't have jurisdiction or authority to hear the case, right? Um, and that it should be in that particular state's immigration court. And that, of course, the federal government would argue with that because, if you're in Texas and the person has been transported from Minnesota, you got your favorable judge, that type of thing. And so what you would say is no, like for instance, what we just talked about. So Minnesota has a long arm statute, all right? And you can just, yeah, so you got plenty of that you can make under number one. And just you taking notes, however you learn. Also, this is being taped, so you'd be able to watch this again. But just know that would kind of be you would structure your argument under number one. Number two, it would say, certain law authorizes a detention during the removal proceedings. And, and you can see where she says like it doesn't, this argument doesn't do well. Well, yeah. I mean, if the person has, so my response to this would be, my client or my family member has one applied for, let's just say they applied for, worker status. They've gone to every single hearing over the last 3 years, right? They don't have any criminal, complaints against them. They pay taxes, right? So there's no reason why you need to continue to detain this person because they've obeyed the law while they are on, American soil. And also they don't present any argument, or a danger to the community. Okay. So that's how I would approach it under number two. So therefore, first, it is not true that section 12, 25B 2A authorizes detention during the removal proceedings. And also, here's some other things that you got to consider. So I think a few people have their on you guys got to turn on your mute button just so like erroneous noise doesn't get through on the recording. So can everybody just check real quick and see if you're muted or not muted? If you aren't, please mute, but unmute when you got to ask a question. Let's see. Okay, so that's how that would work. More arguments. People should exhaust. They haven't exhausted administrative remedies. Well, once you're detained, you don't. It's a catch-22. You can't exhaust administrative remedies. But also, again, my argument is, hey, I've done everything that I could do. Right? I've applied for whatever variation on my immigration status. I've done all my probation hearings. Never been arrested. I work. I pay taxes. So on and so forth. Criminal history. So look, if the person has a criminal history, and then yeah, there's an issue. But here's the arguments, right? Public safety risk. What they were saying, and I even heard this in court. Traffic tickets. You know what I mean? Well, I mean, come on. Even a DUI, right? If it's a DUI and it's fact specific, right? You blow a .8 DUI because you had a drink and you had a busted tail light. I mean, that's different than somebody who's on their third or fourth DUI and had an accident. So that person they're going to get deported, right? Or somebody that's committed a violent crime, or moral turpitude. Moral turpitude being where you're stealing from people, like embezzlement, for instance, or conversion, all those things. But yeah, so stealing from people, that's a moral turpitude crime or fraud, right? But you know, um, DUI, speeding tickets, things like that. Those aren't the kind of public safety risks that warrant, detention. Okay. So that's how you cover number four. Refugees, number five, resided in, for over a year. Now that's just a spacious argument. Just because they've been there for a year doesn't mean that they're subject to automatic detention. And you can see what she's written, down at the bottom. You just can't justify an open-ended detention, right? Because again, for the attorneys, you're on the soil. You got due process rights under the 14th Amendment, and to pass a law or invoke some type of law or some type of conduct on behalf of the government that infringes on the freedom of aliens, requires a certain level of scrutiny, and you guys remember that from Constitution law. So, but what that means, what I just said to the lawyers and the law people, what that just generally means is that if you're an alien, which is how they describe it in the Constitution, meaning a person who's here, under some type of permissive status, you got the same rights under the Constitution as a person who's born here naturally. Okay, so that's those are some of the arguments. Any questions before we move on to resources for pro se petitioners? Speak up, comments, questions, please. Catherine, you got to turn yourself off mute, and then you got to
I
turn
know. I get. So wait, you said something about people who are not citizens having the same rights as not as citizens, and I know that that's actually a huge point of this, is that yes, when they do and when they don't. Could you talk about that just a little bit more? Or maybe
Okay,
I
I'll
didn't
talk
fully
about it,
understand.
but then I'm going to invoke Candace. All right, but first, I'm just going to talk about it as a constitutional lawyer who does this all the time. Is that you know in the textbook, in the way that we argue criminal law, and then the other type of law that I do is that you know first 10 amendments, Bill of Rights, 1 through 10, and really we're concerned about 1, 4, 5, 6, and 8. And then the 14th Amendment applies it to the states, right? I just have to say that because otherwise the lawyers will be like, hey, you didn't do that right. But anyway, all right. So you got a right to freedom of expression on the First Amendment. You got a right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. You got a right to, be free from self-incrimination. That's the Fifth Amendment. Sixth Amendment, right to counsel when you're in custody. Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. So on and so forth. So you got as a citizen. Well, the 14th Amendment comes along and says if if you are in the country and you're from another country, you're still afforded those rights. There's a carve out in the 14th Amendment that says you're still afforded those rights like any other citizen, right? Um, and in order to take those rights away, there's got to be you got to be subject to a process. First, the government's got to give you some type of notice. They got to say, "Hey, we're about to take away these rights." All right, so you know, get that in your mind. Two, you got to be able to be heard on that, meaning you got a chance for a hearing and make your case that that this thing that they're going to do is wrong. And so that's where we get that from the 14th Amendment. If you were to get into constitutional law in law school, you spend a lot of time, like your second semester or the second part of the year, just talking about the due process clause and all the variations in the way that you argue it. And one of the things is the different levels of scrutiny, right? And Patricia remembers because she's doing this now as we speak, is that you got your first level of the scrutiny, right? Your second, which includes alienage and sexual orientation, or not sexual orientation, but alienage and gender, and I think something about children, like they were orphaned or something like that, right? And then the highest level of scrutiny is when you're trying to discriminate or you pass laws like based on people's race, uh, religion, sexual orientation, that type of thing, right? So different levels of scrutiny, but there's a specific carve out level of scrutiny for alienage under the 14th Amendment due process clause. So that's what I can say from the constitutional intellectual standpoint. However, we are not in the textbook. We are in some weird, bizarre world where the Constitution is not being followed. All right. And, unfortunately, that's why we're all on this call and listening to this is because, we're trying to help people who are having their constitutional rights violated. So that's unfortunate. Now, I will defer to Candace to add to that, who practices immigration. But you got to take yourself off mute, Candace.
I don't know. I agree exactly with what you've said in terms of we're not following the Constitution. There is kind of a bizarre cutout that makes some sense where even under Biden, if someone came over the border, climbed a fence, didn't report at one of the points of entry, didn't have a credible fear interview, they have somewhat of a lesser status, it would appear. And if they're caught within 100 miles of the border, which is interesting how they draw that, because even in Philadelphia, we're at the border, according to DHS. And my town was pretty far from New Jersey and the ocean, which would be our border. Um, that you don't even end up with any of those kinds of rights, even under the regulations, it would appear. So there's this kind of hazy area where yes, aliens, but whether or not you get treated with that status as an alien is something else, and particularly those folks who came over the border and were not vetted or were not, as they call it, admitted, which is a really technical legal term. They find themselves in a much more different situation than those who entered the country through some port of entry at least, and had some form of interview and vetting, if that makes
Excellent.
any sense.
Makes sense to me, but I wondered, anybody else can anybody? Great, Candace. Candace, and by the way, where we're at right now before we get into resources, anything that I missed in the previous slides?
No, I don't think so. I'm struggling with a person or lawyer out of state and also someone who's very capable of filling out forms. How physically do we get things like this story? Because I'm not in a place to interview people. Um,
Yeah.
how do you get the facts? And then once you give them the facts, so I have a person who's a volunteer paralegal, she can format all this for me beautifully. But then if we send it to someone, who do we send it to? And
Oh,
how do we
yeah.
get that document in the right place and served on the right people when you're giving it to somebody pro se, maybe the person's wife or their best friend or somebody? That's the part I'm kind of trying to figure out. Where do I fit in the pieces? Particularly
Let,
because I'm out of
let's
state.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's
Mhm.
come back to that. I mean, we didn't
Yes.
have a slide for
Mhm.
it, but let's definitely come back to it. It's so that's important, and let's talk about that. Let's kind of talk that out for everybody. But real quick, I'll just quickly do these. That's a good question. So here's the resources for Pro Se. Okay, so just get this slide, and you'll get all these. You'll get all these URLs. Okay, and you can take a look at these, and they even have like a sample form as what Catherine Shane is looking for, right? So if you look at the top, and then it's got the guidebook, so you can start there. Okay, so that's number one. Okay, and then just real quick about asylum. So again, there's you can do an asylum petition, and again, asylum's a little bit different. She says you got to be a refugee, and basically you got to show like the reason why, what the extenuating circumstances are, why you don't want to be deported back to your country. So you're making an argument like that. And that's what it comes down to. And typically it's persecution, violence. I mean, you guys, and you know a lot of the people why they're here, right? Um, so you want to do something that more than just economic circumstances, but you could do that as well. And also, like Patricia said, I've been here and we've established some things. And if I go back, there may be issues. So. And I'm getting through this just to get back to what Candace was saying. So again, how you get it, the factors for asylum. One, be there, be in the States. You can fill out the form. You can talk about your changed circumstances, right? Um, how it, like circumstances which affect your asylum eligibility, right? So maybe you're dependent on somebody else's asylum application, or maybe you're not. But I think what everybody really gets into is this extraordinary circumstances. So violence and persecution, you know, medical stuff. I mean, you know, medical tourism, right? So that type of thing. And then what's affirmative asylum versus defensive asylum? Asylum you're going to apply for regularly. You're applying for it. That's your original reason to come to the country. But can you guys hear me? Can you hear? Test, test.
Yeah, you're good now. You're good. You're good.
Affirmative versus defensive. Defensive, you're. It's kind of like I guess the way I read it is you're kind of last resort, and you're like, hey, like this didn't work, so now I'm gonna try to defend myself from being deported by applying for defensive asylum. Last ditch effort. And then again, she has all the things that you got to do, like, be physically present, file the 589, I-589, fingerprint, so on and so forth. Do the interviews. Bars to asylum. So you got to file it within 1 year. All right. So some of these things are unforgiving, like statute limitations. Um, Maybe you've already been denied for asylum, and maybe they, you know, they can bring you to another country. I mean, I don't, that sucks, but especially if you've already established roots. And then number four, some type of terrorism tag. So those would be bars to it. And again, use the pro se person of the attorney. You're making the arguments against it. And then if she has more resources for pro se applicants. So, and then I'm sorry, let me go back. So yeah, this is for asylum stuff, and again, you can they'll have some forms there for you. And then the attorney resources. So again, I was able to do for the attorneys that are on the call asylum hearings because I filled out the limited appearance form at first. Now they don't let me even do that anymore. And then, like, and then you got some things about your obligations. Um, and then advisories about habeas corpus petitions. But basically, you can fill all that stuff for me, what I found online. Then you get a number, immigration court number, and then you can appear and do these escorts. And again, knowing nothing about immigration law, but I've done enough. I've done thousands of hearings and motion arguments and all that kind of thing in my life that I can go in there and just argue the facts, which, relatively easy to do. You ask me to quote the law, I'm not going to be able to do that in this case, but desperate times call for desperate measures. And anyway, even if I'm going in court on the stuff that is my expertise, I am going to argue the facts. All right. So attorney resources. And so that sums that up. And then first of all, before we get into what Candace is talking about, any questions from here at this point? So I would say, Winona raised her hand. Go ahead, Winona, just speak up.
Yeah,
Are you
so
gonna turn on your
I
camera? I've never met you before. Come on, don't hide.
I'm trying to put my kids to bed right now,
Okay,
so
okay,
it's
okay,
okay
okay.
for mess
Sorry,
right
sorry,
now.
sorry,
But I'm
sorry.
stepping away to ask this question because I read that at least in Minnesota, 90% of the habeas corpuses do result in a bond hearing or in release. Do we know how many of those, or at least how many of those that are pro se, result in favor of the petitioner? Because I'm worried about the folks that don't have an attorney at their hearings. What are the success rates for them, and if it's something that they should, um, you know, go through the stress of doing, or should they just really, fork up the money and hire the attorney?
Short answer to this. First of all, you guys, Winona's an attorney. Real quick, Winona, if you could just introduce yourself, and because we got a few
Sure.
attorneys, but one hasn't been on these. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Winona. I am licensed in Minnesota. I am a Hmong American attorney, and my work is in pardons. And so, with pardons, my so much of my work has shifted into people who have orders of removal who are seeking to pardon their convictions before or during, even during like detainment. And so I found myself kind of doing pardons and then scrambling um, to learn how to do immigration with Operation Metro Surge. And so now I'm just trying to learn about it as much as I can. With the help of James, I learned that attorneys need to have a federal district court license to represent habeas corpus arguments in immigration court. And so that's beyond the scope of what I can do with my state license. And so I'm interested in learning more about pro se or helping people fill out pro se. Going back to my question, I just want to know what is the success rate of it, and if it's something that, I should you know, advise people that I'm working with to do that, or if the success rate is that much better when they hire that immigration attorney.
I'm going to give you a three-part answer. The immediate answer, number one, is I have no clue, and that's two, we don't have any stats. Like we can't get any stats on anything, right? I mean, we know how this administration feels about stats, Winona. So I see Winona's putting up her thumb, but right? Am I right? So there's no way that we can know. Three, we actually, one of the calls that I put out is we need mathematicians, right? We need law clerks like Ian to keep stats or come up with ways so that we can do that and get people to kind of self-report and fill that out so that we know, right? Because we don't have the stats. I mean, maybe Patricia, Kylie, you guys tapped into something, but I don't think that we have any stats, and I don't think this administration likes stats.
They don't, but however, I have been looking that up, Winona, so I appreciate that question. I looked at the Vera Institute and also the American Immigration Council. Earliest stats that I have from the latter are from November in 2025. Right now, I could get you some better data, like better aggregated data to get to you via email after this meeting, because I don't want to misspeak. However, what I have seen and noticed is that there is a marginal um, increase in the amount of returns that happen with a person who has been represented by an attorney versus someone who is pro se.
Excellent.
But I'm going to get you some definitive information. So if I can get your email, then if
Okay.
you're on the attorney chat, if you just text,
Okay.
if not, yeah, I'll get your information and I can get that to you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Excellent.
If you
But
need
yeah,
anything, let me know.
yeah, we need stats, folks. So that's excellent, Patricia. So, and that's a
Only
big part of
question,
it. Yeah, go ahead.
pro
I can't
se,
see.
that means a person's representing themselves or being represented by a layperson.
Pro se, that's exactly what it means. Pro se means you're representing yourself. It's just a
Okay.
fancy. Yeah.
Now, here's my question. So, um, somebody I know, Maria, needs an attorney. There is no resources to pay for an attorney for Maria. Um, None, right? So Maria cannot do anything other than pro se. But I at least speak English. I can at least read these forms. Um, what is my standing to assist Maria? Is it basically I fill out the forms to the best of my ability, see if I can find somebody who knows what they're doing to look them over and make sure I didn't utterly mess it up, and then give it to Maria, and Maria turns them in herself? Is that how that works?
That's what you got to do. That's the short answer is that's what you got to do. That's the way it
Okay,
works for
cool. Thank
now.
you. I
Yeah.
just want to make
And
sure
you
I'm
and you got
understanding
attorneys
that
here.
correctly.
Well, you're gonna make friends with like Candace and Patricia and because and some of the other attorneys on the signal chat group because they're helping people do this type of thing, all right? So,
Mhm.
but yeah, and part of why we're doing this is so people can flood the zone with these petitions. Like we need people to we need people to file these. I mean, yeah. And part of the thing is even if you file it and you make a mistake, most likely the judge is going to issue a minute order that'll tell you like where you're mistaken and you go back, correct the mistake and keep going. But you got to try. Like we all got to try. That's the point. That's always been
Okay,
my
cool.
point of view is like just try whatever the hell I can, right? To try to keep people from getting deported. Bottom line. All right. Go ahead, Jordan. No camera? Okay, well,
Hi.
don't hide, Jordan.
No
I'm
camera.
joking.
Sorry. Um, so I've been on the Pacers database because I'm helping people look at their stuff, and I'll see that it's dismissed, but it like without prejudice, so they can refile, but it won't say what it's dismissed for. Are they sending them the edits, I guess, that they need to make or why it was dismissed?
So they don't send edits, okay? Like the judge is not going to give you edits. When they say it's dismissed with prejudice, it really largely depends on the court. Sometimes they issue a minute order and they give you a detailed explanation as to why they denied it, but a lot of times they won't even do that. All right.
Okay.
So yeah, so you got to get with, if you can, get with an attorney or some, law student or somebody else who's pro se or, advocate who's done a lot of these. So that's the way you got to handle that. All right. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's good that you're looking at Pacer. That's the way to go. And you can look at some other cases. Look at the minute orders. When I say the minute order, when a judge issues a ruling on a case, a lot of times they will put forth like a piece of paper or they'll put it in Pacer like, hey man, this is my rationale behind why I'm doing this. And that'll give you a lot of insight. So, okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. So look at it that way, Jordan. But I hope all this is helping. But back to what Candace was saying, which is really important. Like she's trying to. Oh, go ahead, Patricia.
Real quick, for Catherine, I would like to connect with you, Catherine Shane, because you're bringing up something that's very important. Some people are helping individuals who maybe do not speak English or don't understand what's being in front of them, right? And we have a ton of different communities that are affected by this. As we start to create templates, I know because I'm creating the templates with James support and Trisha's support, um, and everyone else's, all the other attorneys on the line. I would like to provide a type of translation for you as a helper so that you're able to see what we mean. I think if it's a list of definitions that you need, if it's something that can really help to guide you, because unfortunately, at least in Pennsylvania and in other states, I believe Minnesota, well, I know Minnesota is the same, as a pro se representative, you are someone who you're expected to have the knowledge when you're there. So if you don't know the definition of a word, it doesn't matter. So I want to ensure that you have this information. And if you need it in more than one language, I would like to provide that to you. But it sounds like what you need is very specific. So it would be really helpful for me if I could talk to you as I start to crank out these templates to help pro se people and really identify where your needs are. Because I have a bit of a blur to it as a soon to be attorney than I would if I weren't. So I would appreciate your help.
Great. And I mean, to a certain degree, I don't know what I don't know, but I mean, one of the things James said was very helpful to me was like, if you mess it up, they're more likely to tell you to try again than to just simply like, you know, I don't know, do
Yeah, get
something
out.
terrible.
Yeah. You have a
Um,
lot more you have more leeway as a pro se person than if you're someone who's an attorney by far.
Um,
Yeah.
and so and I guess and so, but yeah, what I'm looking for is like if we simply can't get it, obviously an attorney is the way to go, right? There's no question about it. And attorneys, you wouldn't go to law school for all this time if it didn't matter. But if there's no attorneys, what do we do? What's the best thing? And that's what
Yeah.
I want to fight.
And that's what this is all about. That's why you have the resources and everything. And again, you can't just get just any attorney because if you have me doing your immigration case, you're in trouble. Right? I can sue the cops all day, defend people in court, criminal, like, do constitutional arguments, that type of thing. But I'm not the one to do your immigration. Yeah, I could go argue your asylum, but don't have me fill out your paper for a green card because it's malpractice. You know what I mean? So, yeah. All right. So make sure everybody post your emails and everything here, and I make sure that Catherine gets in the chat. But back to what Candace is saying, she's trying to help people from another state. She's trying to serve, and what I was trying to get to, right, Candace? Like you're trying to help someone, you're not sure which state. That's where we got to use that group chat to our ability so that people can reach out and do that type of thing. The other thing is service of process, like especially for the law students and the lawyers. That is a huge thing, and lawyers don't even understand it because you talk about it conceptually in civil procedure, but you really don't know until you get out of law school, like how hard it is to move a case forward, like just doing service, right? Like my team, um, you know, with like Ian and Brooke, like a lot of everything is just like trying to figure out who to serve. Sometimes you go to sue a company and you name them as like Target LLC, and they're like, and then you go serve them, their agent of service to process, they're like, nope, that's not our correct name, and they're not willing to tell you like the right name. So then you got to go, you know what I mean? And that's all about service. So that's Candace, is that answering some of your questions though?
Well, I guess my sense is what practically does it look like for a pro se person now? How are they going to serve people?
I mean, yeah, and that's the thing is you're going to have to fill this out. I think at least what I've seen. Number one, okay, so let me just back up. Everybody here should get an ECF account, like Jordan, right? Uh, and you can kind of see how things are done. Like you can read through cases, see how that's done, and you can get one as a pro se person. That's number one, and you can just look at cases. Two, those practice guides that we flashed up on the screen will tell you some things like because I saw one of those links was about service, okay, and like making sure and naming the proper party. So do that. Three, like the actual practicality, like in our lawsuits when we actually serve an entity, we get a process server, and then they know how to do that, right? They like you hire one legal or some company like that, and they're experienced in doing that, but it costs money. And Candace is saying, what do we do when there's no money? And so, yeah, you got to use those between the guides and between like looking on ECF and just asking people on on the group or anywhere. You're gonna have to cross-reference and figure that out. I hope that helps, Candace. It doesn't help, but at least maybe it points you in the right direction.
Hmm.
No?
Yeah. The second part of my it is trying to visualize. You have a pro se client who goes in, appearing at their hearing. They've gotten through all of that. What would you even prepare them to say? Just, I mean, what would they be asked by the judge? It wouldn't be like a normal hearing.
Yeah, and I was gonna say it's different, right? Like remember, so for people, for the lawyers, you go to court, you do criminal case, and every court does it differently. Like you might voir dire somebody, meaning you ask the questions that the judge would ask. Are you here under your own volition? Do you understand the rights that the court gave you? Anything else that you want to say to the court? Do you understand these rights? Same kind of thing that you would do there. Like maybe you have to voir dire somebody, or you just got to prepare the person to talk in bullet points in whichever language they talk in, like, don't ramble and say, this is why I think that I should stay in the country. And the answers are all, and you got to prepare them to say that. One, you know, if they've been persecuted, if I go back to my country, I'm going to be subjected to violence or whatever it is. Two, I've been here and I've applied. I follow the law and I've applied. Three, I've done all my probation hearings. Four, I've established roots here. I pay taxes. I work. I got a job. Like I'm here to work. Like I own a house. I got kids. My kids are born here. That type of thing. You know, Six, like, hey, whatever it is. And so that's the way you would do it. And that's the way I did it. And again, that just comes from talking to the person, but also if you're not sure, learn how to write the statement of facts, folks. Not for Candace, but for anybody else. So we'll have those uh those workshops, coming up. We'll have one on Saturday morning, by the way. But statement of facts. Every case starts with the statement of facts. Once you get the statement of facts and how to write it, you're on your way. I'm going to teach you how to do it manually and then also with AI. Candace, did we lose her?
No, I'm here.
Okay. How's
I'm
that?
I'm just being quiet.
How's that help? I mean, I don't know if that helps.
It's piece by piece, you start to visualize what this really looks like. I wish I was out there that I could go to a pro se habeas corpus and hearing and see what it is, what it looks like, how they actually treat it.
Candace, if you want to come visit me, we can hang out. We'll have a couple of beers, and we'll go. We'll go pull the lever.
I'd love to.
So you're welcome anytime, for real. And you can come to California also, like for the attorneys, like, like I said, you guys that are sort of getting into the practice, or you haven't done a lot of hearings, like, or whatever it is, depositions, preliminary hearings, or just these, I got my Zoom hearings. I included you guys on the hearings that I have, like, coming up, so you can see. And Candace, that like maybe that I was just assuming that you've been there. There we go. Somebody posted the CM ECF stuff, and Jordan probably has a link too. But yeah, you can do that, and you'll see some of my hearings. So, Jordan, go ahead. Go ahead, Jordan. You're probably
Sorry, I was stuck. So I had a question about man, now I'm blanking. Collecting property from the building. Do you know if there's like any documentation that they need to file to go get that, or they're
yeah,
supposed
Jordan.
to be it?
Well, that's sort of off topic, like right, because really that's going
Yeah.
to come up with the thing tomorrow
Maybe.
about the
Okay.
protesters and people that are detained. But basically, I've asked for phones back, everything, and all they've ever told me is we're keeping it and we're going to get a search warrant. Now,
Okay.
in again, per the Constitution, you got to have probable cause to search people's stuff. All right, I almost said shit because it frustrates me, but we aren't operating with the Constitution, so I don't know
Right.
what to tell you. There's been no, and I can't tell you any patterns or anything like that, and they're just not giving them, and that's what I'm going to say tomorrow too. That has been my experience, and probably every attorney here will tell you, yeah, you go to the Whipple building and they're, oh yeah, we're getting a search warrant, which is total BS. Now that I said ding dong, the witch is dead, like earlier about what happened today, the firing. But is that going to change because of her? Because she's gone? Or
Oh,
okay, yep. See, Catherine answered the question. I think Jane said the same thing.
sorry.
They had the same reaction.
Looping back to on topic. Sorry, looping back to on topic. I kind of blanked and I was remembering like where I was going to tie that in. Is there like for constitutional observers versus legal observers, can anyone go and observe a habeas court proceeding? Or
Yeah, they're in
do you
federal
have to have
court.
a legal observer training?
Yeah, they're in federal court. So if you know the date and time, I mean you can look that up on ECF and yeah, you could go in court and go do that.
Because I want to start observing so I can kind of understand the process better, and then maybe
Yeah.
that will yield some insight on how it goes, why things are getting dismissed or sent back with the habeas petitions.
Yeah, and Jordan brings up a good point. Go observe. If I mean, just find the calendar, go on ECF, or just find out what the immigration calendar is. Just Google it and go watch the hearings. Google habeas Minneapolis or St. Paul, and get on your bike, get in your car, get on the light rail, go over there, be there. Make sense, Jordan?
Yes, and I have the docket link for the calendars for hearings in that document. So I'll share the document that I compiled with everyone if you add me to the chat.
Okay. So, and so one thing just before because we don't want to take up too much of people's time, but are you guys Does this help, folks? I wonder. I mean, I don't know. Okay, all right. So we'll keep doing it, you know. And yeah. Okay. So yeah. So we got tomorrow. We're talking about constitutional rights as it relates to people who are, like protesters, ICE watchers, ICE observers, monitors, demonstrators, like anybody that gets picked up by ICE, and then, they get a ticket or they get a court date, talk about the process and defending them in federal court, but also, to Jordan's answer about getting property back, and just about the whole process of what we think, what you shouldn't do, tips, that type of thing. And there'll be some attorneys from around the country, and we're talking about it at a high level. And so that's what's going on tomorrow. And if I hope that helps people. And if you're an ice watcher like Jordan, please come tomorrow and we'll answer a lot of questions. Also for the huge volume of people that I'll be representing throughout who have been arrested at Whipple, 26 at Nicollet, the church, all over the place. And people are like, well, how does this even work? You know what I mean? So that's what we're doing. Please download the file that she shared. Take a minute to copy all the URLs that were posted in the chat. Again, I will be faster about posting this. I don't know what happened to it when Kylie did it. And Kylie is going to do a much more comprehensive version of this presentation with the information about bond hearings on Saturday, I believe, after we do the statement of facts. So either one of those, if you can attend, great. And we will just continue to do these, folks. And please, let people know. Come to it and get your questions answered. Now, for the attorneys in the group, is there anything I missed or anything you want to comment, starting with Tricia?
No, I think it covered a lot, and it was all very good. One thing I do want to add, as far as asylum goes, is just that it's almost impossible to get now. There was a recent decision, I think it's called like BIA versus HAAV, and maybe Candace knows this too. But when I was on a human rights meeting, they said it's nearly impossible now. They're just not seeing anyone getting asylum granted because they have people there every day watching, and they're just constantly getting denied across the board. So I just wanted to add that little bit in about asylum, just a little update.
Folks, continue to try. Try everything. Try. That's our job, advocates and lawyers. You try, and you go down fighting, right? Anything to add to that, Candace or Winona?
I agree. I think you just keep on filing everything you can. It doesn't hurt to try unless unless you don't have the time or whatever. But if you have it, I'm pro bono, so I'm free and I'm retired. So and I tried cases I thought I'd never win, and I won, and it was pretty amazing. But I think if it's the right thing, it'll move forward the way it needs to. So I think trying is important, and particularly I think Catherine, by all means, folks who fill out forms, I think we all need to work together to figure out how do we make those forms appear where they need to be. They need to get before a judge, and at least someone's heard it.
Mhm. Looks like I did go into the Fort Snelling Immigration Court website, and it looks like they do WebEx too. And there is a way to get in. I don't know if it's helpful.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So we might be able, I'll try and go in there
yeah,
tomorrow.
Jordan.
That would be super helpful. And then I know I'm not supposed to give legal advice, but I was wondering if people could file more petitions to do e-hearings or web hearings, because I know in our courts we can do that. Not to say if this is good advice or not, but I'm like, why don't we just clog up the courts with a bunch of motions?
Jordan, that's the purpose.
Would that
That's
help?
why
I
we're here.
agree, yes.
I'm
Let's
like,
flood
we
the
can
zone. I
just
said flood the
do
zone,
extensions.
but yeah, that's what we're trying to do. That's why we're saying pro se. We're encouraging pro se. So yes, you are correct.
slow this shit down. That's what I've been
Mhm.
saying. But I'm like,
Yep.
I'm nervous
Thank
since
you.
I'm not a lawyer. I know legal stuff, a lot of legal stuff, but I don't want to get in trouble for giving legal advice, if that makes sense.
Well, that's
You're not a
not,
lawyer yet.
yeah, that's
I
not
know
legal
I'm
advice.
Yet.
self-taught.
That's not legal advice. No, it is good legal advice. Slow this shit down. That I think that was written in Cook
Yeah.
versus whoever, U.S. government.
Sorry.
Okay,
Okay,
awesome.
Winona, because Winona does pardons and is kind of like what happened with me. You're working and all of a sudden you're just into it, right? I mean, anything that we missed or that we needed to add or from the pardon perspective. I mean, you do a lot of hearings and stuff too. So
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot I could go on for like ever. And just like with the rate of how fast these immigration laws are changing, it's just really hard to like stay on top of everything with an immigration. Like yesterday, I had a client who he's already been deported, but he wants to do a pardon, and because the particular statute, the federal law regarding like sexual misconduct against a minor, it's changed from under 18 to just under 16. And so like I would love to just be able to have an attorney that does immigration like to talk with about these like the changes in the laws and what can and cannot be done. I know that a lot of the immigration attorneys in Minnesota are like at max capacity. Like I went to the Volunteer Lawyers Network training immigration group, and they were like, we're not even gonna be taking on like attorneys that want to do immigration. If you want to do immigration, you can help with like the deportation forms. But beyond that, it's been really difficult to just have like a mentor or someone that can kind of give me some guidance as I'm working on these pardons. It's been really difficult for me to kind of find or build those relationships here in Minnesota. So if anyone here does immigration and is willing to kind of be someone that I can talk with regularly as I work with clients and their pardons, that'd be really helpful for me and the people that I'm helping because I also help them pro bono as well.
well, there's Candace. Candace was actually going to do a presentation on that, but Candace, there's speak up number in the chat, email, get on Signal chat. Go ahead, Candace.
Oh, I put my email in the chat.
Yeah.
I'm certainly willing to talk to anybody. I don't know anything about pardons, but um,
No, she wants your immigration knowledge. So
yeah.
Winona, Candace,
Mhm.
Candace has actually talked to me about like trying to get some type of mentorship type thing going, right? With attorneys. So please reach out to Candace on the Signal chat and I
Great.
can
Thank
connect
you
you
so
guys as
much.
well. And you also got the law students who doing the research. I mean, the stuff that Patricia and you know Kylie, these guys are doing, I mean, excellent, excellent work. Ian, who's here, I mean, he works on my team. They got a lot of knowledge, like when it comes to litigating. Yeah, Ian's somewhere, but yeah. But yeah, all right. I think I think we better wrap it up for now, and I'm gonna stop the tape and try to get this uploaded a little quicker than we did. And yeah, I hope this was really helpful. And again, Kylie's next presentation on Saturday will be, even more about bond hearings and so on. And then we're gonna get into know your rights. And then the other thing that if somebody, a couple action items. One, if somebody could look up the stuff that Jordan was talking about, that like sort of Jordan and Candace were talking about, maybe look up, serving, and also how we can, you know, watch hearings on remote. I think Jane and Jordan. So if you guys could come prepared with that knowledge on Saturday, that'd be great. The other thing is I would like to connect like our Signal chat and like sort of this Minneapolis group with the folks that are fighting the detention centers that are attempted to being built in like other parts of the country. So, for instance, if somebody could just, do a quick search and find out who's doing the fight, like in Oregon, maybe Arizona, Georgia, that would be great. And we could bring that knowledge, and they could benefit from the same knowledge. All right. Thank you. Good to see the new people. And that's it. I'm going to stop the chat. Everybody got all the information? Does anybody not have the information? Okay. All right, folks. I'm going to assume everybody's got it. Join the Signal chat. See you guys later. Good night.
Have a good night. Thank you.
See you later.